Right, now we're going to talk about safe care and risk, which is crucial in the field of looked after children. So the skills to foster divide potential sources of harm to children into 5 categories, which I think is really helpful. So they talk about everyday accidents and hazards, risky people, dangers arising from children's own behaviour, oppressive social attitudes and negative stereotypes, and a risk-avoidant culture. So with number 1, with everyday accidents and hazards, what we're talking about there is trips, falls, those kind of things. I want you to have a think about what you can do as a foster carer to try and overcome those, and we'll come back to that. Risky people. So at this point, I always say to everyone in the room, who are risky people? And more often than not, the answer that comes back to me is strangers. And yes, a stranger can be a risk to a child, but actually anybody can be a risk to a child. Anybody could harm a child. And that's what we need to prepare our children for and make them aware of. So anyone who's a similar age to me, that's 40, by the way, will remember from school, we used to watch videos on say no to strangers, and I can remember coming home with stickers saying say no to strangers, and you used to watch a video where there was some children playing in the park, and an old man in a Mac would come to the park and say, do you want some sweets? And he'd have some sweets in his pocket, and then he'd say, do you want to come and see some puppies in the van? And he'd take the children to see the puppies in the van, lock them in the van and drive off, and the message was, say no to strangers. All that taught me was, don't go near people with sweets and puppies, or people that you don't know. It didn't teach me that if this happens to me, that's wrong. If someone says this to me, that's wrong. If someone does this and it makes me feel like this, that's wrong, regardless of who it is. It only prepared me for the fact that strangers are risky. What we need to prepare our children for is the fact that anyone can harm them. So again, we're going to get you to have a think about that and what you can do about that. Dangers arising from children's own behaviour. So quite often we will get people giving the example of self-harm, and yes, we have lots of children who self-harm, right from little to big. Little ones can headbutt when they're frustrated, big ones can actually do things like cut themselves and other such behaviours. Dangers arising from children's own behaviour is such a broad category. When it comes to self-harm, if you have got a child who self-harms, I would urge you to complete our self-harm training, because it's really important to understand why that child might be self-harming, and to try and stop it isn't always the best course of action. Oppressive social attitudes and negative stereotypes, I'm going to come to in a minute. A risk-avoidant culture. So have a think about what a risk-avoidant culture might mean, or what you think it is. And this basically is exactly what I want to do to my 2-year-old. I want to wrap him in cotton wool, I want to wrap him in bubble wrap, and stay like this with him all the time, because he's so precious and I don't want him to come to any harm. However, we know that children need to take risks, proportionate risks, which we're going to talk about. But if I wrap him in cotton wool and don't give him the opportunity to explore, to climb the steps to that slide by himself, his learning opportunities are going to be hindered. So by being too risk avoidant can be harmful to children, because they need to learn and they need to explore. Okay, I'm going to ask you to pause me, and I want you to have a discussion about the kind of things you can do to manage these risks or to prevent these sources of harm. Okay, we'll pause there. Right, Okay, so everyday accidents and hazards. You might have come up with things like making sure we've got home safety equipment, making sure that our children only take part in activities that are age appropriate and that they're capable of. So just because one child's friends are taking part in rock climbing, for example, your child might not be able to do that, and that might be too dangerous for your child. Risky people, basically your role is to talk to children and have conversations about what is and isn't okay. So you might be aware of the NSPCC, the pants rule. And basically the pants rule is anything in my pants is private, and if somebody asks to see it or touch it or anything like that, that's not okay, regardless of who it is. So what we're saying is we're not going to children and saying, hello, I could harm you. What we're saying is these are the things that are not okay. And your main job, crucial job for you guys in this one, is creating a safe relationship. You need to make yourself that person that the child can come to and say, this has happened, it doesn't feel safe. Because if children don't have anybody to tell, then they are at more risk of harm. So the most important thing that you can do is be that person of safety. Be their trusted person, be their safe person, and react to what they tell you in a safe way. So that doesn't mean going, and blowing up yourself. It means being able to manage yourself, keep yourself calm, and reassuring the child that you will help them and you will help to sort this out. Dangers arising from children's own behaviour. So you may have come up with things like, I'm going to make sure that all activities are age appropriate, where self-harm's concerned, you need to think about how you can support with that. If children are regularly going missing, you need to make sure that you're aware of policies and procedures. But again, with this one, if children are engaging in behaviours that are putting them at risk, drugs, alcohol, sexual promiscuity, all this kind of stuff, you need to be that trusted person. Because when it gets difficult, they need someone to talk about it. If you are the person who just stands there going, no, stop it, and just trying to stop things and rule things and control things, we're not going to get anywhere, because we're not getting to the root of why the child is doing that in the first place. The best thing you can do is be that trusted person. Like I said, we're going to come back to this in a second. Risk avoidant culture, I suppose the key to that is allowing children to take risks, but proportionate risks, and we're going to have a look at what we mean by weighing up risk and taking proportionate risks. So thinking about oppressive social attitudes and negative stereotypes then, so you might be thinking to yourself, oh, that's all about racism, homophobia, these kind of attitudes, your isms, if you like. And yes, they can be really harmful to children, because when we talked about role models, if a child has been around someone who holds, let's say for example, a racist view, that child will adopt that view for themselves. And I've seen so many children express oppressive views, judgmental views, quite dangerous views, and when you talk to that child about their understanding of that view or why they hold that view, they have no idea. It's because it's what they've heard, and that's the power of role models. So our job is to undo that. But one of the potential sources of harm in this category to your children is that label of being in care. So for some of our children, they are at risk of being bullied because they are in care, because we all know children who bully, bullying is all about difference. So if there's something different about a child, it puts them at risk of being bullied, and for some of our kids, being the care kid places them at risk with that. So what we need to do is we need to challenge this, and we need to be good role models. When we think about these kind of attitudes that are out there, I've fallen victim to them myself. Just to give you a really simple example, I breastfeed my son, and I've had some quite nasty, flippant comments about the fact that I breastfeed a toddler. It's my choice. I'm not judging anybody who doesn't do that, but for some people to put that view on me shows a lot of judgment. And I had someone once who told me I was disgusting. And when I picked it apart with him, because I wanted to pick him apart, but I thought, no, we're going to pull this apart and see where this comes from. When I talked to him about it, basically it had come from his mum. His mum had said to him, you breastfeed till children have teeth and then you stop. And he then adopted that for himself, but couldn't give me any reason as to why this view was his view. It was simply something he'd taken from his mum. And this guy was in his 30s. So children do take these views from you, so you really need to be careful about what message you're giving children. I once had a foster carer. I was in their home and a child came down the stairs and a foster carer used a racial term to this child in describing the corner shop. And when they looked at my face, the foster carer said, oh, I know we're not supposed to say that word, but it's just what we call it. I'm not racist. And I had to have a conversation with that foster carer about, just because it's not racist to you, you're not in that minority group. And when a minority group says, this is offensive, then those of us who are not in that group, it's not for us to decide if it is or it isn't. And the looked after child was hearing them say this and then would probably go on to say it themselves. So judgment, prejudice, oppressive attitudes, oppressive language breeds that in others. So these oppressive social attitudes and negative stereotypes and hidden messages are all around us without us even realising. So this is a shot from the video from the song by Robin Thicke, Blurred Lines. If you don't know it, Google it, have a listen. Usually on a course I do sing it, but I'm not going to do that on camera because you could end up sending it to You've Been Framed and that wouldn't be good. So the song Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke. Now if you go to a disco, take your children to a disco on holiday camp or something like that, and they're at the disco, the kids' disco, this song might come on. It'll come on the radio often, regularly. It's out there. It's a song that can just be played and people will be dancing away, kids will be jumping up and down, singing along to it, Blurred Lines. The connotation behind this song is all about having sex with women against their consent, because if they dress in a certain way, they deserve it. That's what the song's all about. The song's called Blurred Lines. What they're saying is, if you dress in a certain way and then say you don't want it, you're blurring the lines. And there's a song that anyone can access and just dance to and jump up and down. You might be familiar with the video game Grand Theft Auto. So Grand Theft Auto, when my goddaughter started playing this, she used to talk to me about it, GTA, and I was quite ignorant, I suppose, in that I just heard her saying it and didn't ask any questions, didn't think any more to it. Then I found out that it was about stealing cars, and I thought, well, that's not appropriate. But actually it's not just about stealing cars, it's about having sex with prostitutes, then killing them and stealing cars. So some of the messages in these games, and it's glorified, it's okay to do this. So there's things out there that are all around children. It's up to us to counteract them and to give them the positive messages. Think about the language you might use, jokes you might tell, and if you're not doing these in an appropriate way, think about the people that visit your house. So you might have someone visit your house who shares a joke about people with disabilities. If you don't challenge them on that, then that child's going to think that it's okay with you. The child needs to see you challenging that and saying it's not okay. What I would like you to do now is thinking along the lines of internet safety. I would like you all just to watch on YouTube now this clip. If you type into YouTube Kaylee's love story, it will come up straight away, and I would like you to watch this video. I'm not going to play it on here because the quality might not be great for you on camera, but if you access this clip on YouTube yourself and just watch that now, please.